I'm David Renner. This is my farm, Shipley Hill. It's around about 180 hectares, and around about 140 of those are in rotation. This field, it's Cotswold Seeds Lamins humus building mixture, sown this year in May time, and we're about to silage it and feed the silage to the cows over the winter. We actually have a lot of vetch put into the mixture because there's a relatively short time between sowing it and taking a crop of silage from it. So we need something that's going to bulk up really quickly and then provide us with something to feed the cows with. There are also a lot of forage herbs, particularly things like plantain and chicory. So far as I understand, chicory is very good. It has anthelmintic properties. It's a bit of a wormer. There are various other smaller component forage herbs, burnet, sheep's parsley, and various other ones. We take a crop of silage earlier on in the year from a later grass in the rotation, and then we use the aftermath for grazing weaned lambs on, and they seem to do very well on it. I think it's a good mixture to have. We're in mid-Northumberland here, and we are at about 125 metres, which is sort of reasonably high for this area. The soils aren't perfect. They're fairly clay, so they can be fairly heavy to work at times, but actually establishing the crop, I would say it's not really difficult. It's just a case of your sort of standard ploughing. Before going into grass, we will work the soil, power harrow it before sowing. And then it's just a case of combination power harrowing and sowing when we can, ideally in a timely fashion when the amount of water in the soil is ideal. But you've just got to work with what you've got and try and get it in when you can. I think one other thing about this part of the country is that the soils are naturally deficient in some elements. I think particularly things like copper, cobalt, and selenium. Something that's good to have is plants that are very deep-rooted, such as chicory, that tend to bring trace elements up the soil profile, and then they're more available to the animals that eat those plants. And in fact, we don't do an awful lot with the animals. We haven't really noticed any particular trace element deficiencies in the animals. So I think one of the things that I'm assuming is doing them some good is the plant mix that we're sowing here. We've been organic for probably 15, 16 years now, and as I think was to be expected, we get a few weeds. Spring-sown crops seem a lot worse than winter-sown oats, and then because the grass is going back in after a spring crop, normally after spring barley, it means you get this build-up from the previous crop. So there is, you probably see here, there's a little bit of red shank in the grass, but actually it's not really a big issue because, well, this is going to be silaged very shortly, and like next year you won't see any of those weeds there at all. It'll just be the grass mix that was sown. So I don't think that's really an ongoing problem as far as the grass is concerned. I actually did a master's degree up in Aberdeen in 2001, and my master's thesis was on intercropping barley and vetch. And I remember, like, when I was setting up this degree, sort of phoning around for seeds and whatnot, and I spoke to a guy called Robin Hill at Cotswold Seeds, and he gave me a lot. I remember spending an afternoon, he gave me a lot of good advice on growing veg over the telephone from Aberdeen. And then a couple of years later, when it came to actually going organic here, I remember that sort of conversation and how helpful Robin had been at the time, which, we were just buying a few kilos of vetch seeds. Really, it wasn't a big trial or anything. But at the time, he seemed to go out of his way to help me, to give me his knowledge, to help me with the knowledge that he had. So I kind of remembered that, and when we were looking around for seed mix to put in when we were organic, I think that Cotswold was our first port of call then, and we've been buying seed from Cotswold since.